the workshop for Code of Student Conduct to order. It'll be led by Dr. Gabriel Barrio, Dr. Rhonda McMahon, and Mr. Yanni Vera. Dr. Shanoff, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, I just know that if there's one division within the school district that will always remain gainfully employed, it's our student services team, because there's always demand. And but at the same time, there's always opportunity for us to get better in terms of refining the student code of conduct to better reflect some of the challenges that we may be facing, and then also to be a little bit more proactive as it relates to the expectations that we set out for our students, and how those expectations may change depending on different outside forces that may be acting upon our students and our society. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barrio.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to share the not just the revisions, but we're also going to share the process that we followed, the timelines, and our next steps. When we met previously, individually and in groups and in cabinet, we talked about the overview, the plan of action for the revisions of the code of conduct, the timeline that we were going to follow, the summary of actions, the proposed revisions, which is where we are now today. We're going to talk about the final revisions after feedback from all stakeholders, community, and district and school leadership. We're going to talk about next steps, and then to have time for any questions or discussion that you may have. The overview page just talks about that we have the code of conduct to make sure that everyone understands what the school rules are, policy, and procedures related to the code of student conduct. The next slide talks about the timeline that we followed. We started getting input from all of the stakeholders in February, including board members, school board members, parents and students, and district staff. That started in February. Where we got our most of our input was actually through surveys that we sent to everybody. We received at least 1,600 points of feedback from the surveys. The face-to-face and the virtual, we also received feedback. And even though that wasn't as much feedback, it was probably the most robust conversations that we had. And we had really good conversations with the students and the parents that were there, school staff, district staff. And then also we specifically met with Dr. Shanoff's superintendent's student group. And that was actually a very good conversation. And they saw a lot of positives and had also some recommendations, which we included in our feedback. But that was for every stakeholder. The revision, so the plan is to present to you today. We've already, even today, have added some language based on recommendations that we shared with Mr. Boyd that would be added to the public document so that there's time for review and questions from the public. And anything else that may come up today, we're happy to make any adjustments that are needed. After this, we have the board approval. We're going to put up the document for board approval June 23rd. And if passed, the effective date would be July 1st. And then we'll go through the timeline of how that would work. The next slide talks about the purpose of the code of conduct, which is to set expectations for students, and then to have procedures and next steps for disciplinary actions. One of the areas of feedback that we received from students specifically that was a huge positive was that not only did the Code of Student Conduct talk about what we expected them to do, but what they could expect from us. And that's in terms of due process, what their rights are, and how it is an expectation that we really share with them what we expect, but also what rights they have under our Code of Student Conduct. The next slide speaks to the potential of change at with statutes and also with board policy. Any change that happens at that level would be an automatic reflection for the Code of Conduct, and because it's either statute or board policy, it wouldn't require us to have an approval all over again for the Code of Conduct. Next steps after today are to make any revisions needed, particularly with the internal procedures. And I'll share some examples of that as we go through the slides. And then also, once approved, the new code of conduct with the revisions would be shared with school and district-based staff, and we would provide training, particularly for anyone who handles discipline in any way, shape, or form, which is typically school administrators and deans. The Code of Student Conduct revisions, which is on page 3. This slide isn't intended for you to be able to read everything on the slide. It's more intended to show you how we have a one-page graphic that explains that if for a level 1 offense, you can only give level 1 consequences, level 2 consequence, and so on. And so to give you an example of that, for level 1, there's consequences like parent contact, and it specifically mentions that for level 1, you cannot use in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, typically because that follows the process of progressive discipline. The next slide. Is from page 2. It looks like an II, Roman numeral. And that is, you'll see the changes there, 26-27 school year instead of 25-26. It recognizes Ms. Shive as District 3 school board member and Ms. Bronson as the vice chair. Page 7, Code of Student Conduct. The one change we have there is we include pre-kindergarten. And because that was not included in previous language. The next change on page 15, we reflect the change from the old school guidance to counseling. And that's the one change that was a recommendation, school and district based. Page 20, the dress code and uniform policy, we made some clarifications. There was a lot of debate whether everybody knew what a walking shorts were. I admittedly did not, so we changed that to mid-thigh length. And then we also took out fabric because all the feedback we received from students and teachers and admin was that really what matters is how the students are dressed versus what material they are wearing. And then we included pre-K. We included allowing for plain sweatshirts in uniform colors. That does two things. Number one, there was a concern from the students and parents about affordability to be able to get a sweatshirt with the school logo. And so we also wanted to make sure that we avoided the potential, and this was from feedback from the admin group that we met with, making sure that there wasn't any room for colors that were distracting, like gang colors or something of that nature. So we made sure that it had to be in the school uniform colors. And then we also had language about allowing for hoods and zippers, but they can't be worn in the classroom. That has to do more with weather protection for the students. The next page revision on page 26, we wanted to make sure we clarified, and this was from feedback and also experience from last year. Students are allowed by statute to have devices, and they can check on devices when it's for a medical purpose. So for example, if they need to use their cell phone to check their blood sugar, they're allowed to do so, and they can't be stopped from doing that or disciplined. With that said, we also wanted to make sure they understood that cell phones are not to be used upon entry to school campus, and that the top part also highlights that it's during the school day. So we're not talking about after school sports that they can't use their phones or anything of that nature. The page 31 speaks, one other thing about the electronic device is we specifically mentioned including prescription smart glasses in the banned use during the school day, and any other wireless device that's in development. So the example we've mentioned to multiple groups is they now have winter hats that have built-in headphones. They have hoodies that have built-in vapes. And so we wanted to make sure that it's all inclusive, because between now and August, we can almost guarantee there will be something new invented. And we wanted to cover that. Page 31, revisions. We added the dating violence language, and I will have Dr. McMahon speak to that because she is our Title IX coordinator.
We added that for clarity for our students because we currently, many districts in the state are under OEEO audits, and one of the things that they want to know is how do students know how to complain about a Title IX situation. So we specifically put it in there. It is on Fortify Florida that our students use all the time, but in addition, we have a dedicated email, and we wanted students to have access to that at all times.
And I forgot to mention this earlier, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions as I go along. On page 35, one of the additions we made was making sure we add language to explain that AI tools or applications may not be used to generate answers on district, state, or national standardized assessments. We already had it on there last year, but we wanted to add additional emphasis to it just because there's so much more accessibility to artificial intelligence and electronic devices. Page 40, we added, or we made sure to keep, because it was in two different versions, the unauthorized absence from school as a level 1 when students arrive on campus, so that way that there's clear language about that skipping is bad. For page 42, we have revisions for level 2 gambling. We took out gambling, not because we're going to start allowing it, but because it's actually not been a code that we've used to represent discipline. So we really put it under other serious misconduct as a level 2. Page 43, we have threat intimidation. We already have threat intimidation as a level 3 or level 4. We do not have it as a level 2. So there are some cases where there's a threat made that's non-specific and not targeted towards anybody. Like, for example, a second grader saying, "I'm going to fight you." That doesn't necessarily qualify if that's all the student said as a level 3 of suspendable offense. And we want to be able to document that type of referral where they could get in-school suspension so that we monitor and record progressive discipline for that kind of conversation. Page 44, we have bullying level 3. We already had bullying at a level 4, but we have some cases that are not as severe, that are, for example, a single incident where a kid calls another kid ugly. Not necessarily a suspendable offense, but we want to make sure we document it and then we follow the progressive discipline on that type of behavior. Page 48. These are the level 4s, drug sale distribution. It's on there. What we're clarifying is that we're specifically going to use the statute language. So the statute language talks about selling drugs or selling something that is represented as a drug versus just being in possession with the drug or smoking it on campus with a friend, which they're still both level 4s, drug use and drug possession and drug distribution. Then we have harassment, which was a level 3, and we added to level 4, particularly when it involves hate speech of any kind, so that we can be very specific about when that type of hate speech is used, it would fit under harassment.
Can you clarify also for the one with the switch to drug sale and distribution ability for the students that are, it's not distribution?
Yes, thank you. So the main difference between drug use and drug distribution is when a student is a first-time offender for drug use or drug possession, they have the alternative to do the AWARE program, which the purpose of that is, number one, to, if it's a kid that's coming in and they're trying something, we want to try to provide an intervention so that they don't keep doing it. And so the student, rather than being suspended with a recommendation to expel, they would still have that level 4 documented. But if the parent agrees to do the AWARE program, they would be suspended for 3 days out of school suspension. And as long as they complete the AWARE program and begin it and start the process, they'll be allowed to stay at their home zone school until it's complete. If after they complete the AWARE program, the hope is, and our data shows, that they don't repeat for the most part, which is what the whole goal is. But if they do happen to repeat, then they only get one chance to the other AWARE program. The second time, they would be recommended for expulsion, and the likelihood is that they would end up going to New Beginnings as a placement.
And the reason why you put it for drug distribution too was they didn't have the ability to do AWARE if it was labeled as.
That's correct. If they do, drug distribution is very different because you're dealing drugs and you're selling drugs to students and giving a dangerous substance to a student that's not there. So the students that have the drug distribution referral, they don't get the option for AWARE because that's at a whole other serious level. And so they would just be recommended for expulsion. And also law enforcement would be contacted for either one, but the law enforcement for drug distribution, especially depending on the quantity, can be much more severe.
And distribution and sale are different. You don't need to sell in order to be put up for a level 4 for passing out something that would be considered a controlled substance, correct?
That is correct. And examples of that we have seen, not just here, but in other districts, is distribution of vapes, distribution of gummies, that type of thing. But I mean, also just even more pills, things of that nature.
Anytime someone shares something with someone else, that will be considered distribution. So the AWARE program is truly if you as an individual make a singular mistake that only affects you as an individual.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody is clear that you don't need to sell a controlled substance in order to be put up.
That is correct.
Right. The other point I wanted to make, and if we could go back one slide, please. Thank you. So just because it's become so much easier with AI, and AI has become particularly adept at this, this really, this also has a lot to do with creating deep fakes. Does it not?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the idea behind taking somebody's voice and putting it into some sort of AI to say something that isn't accurate absolutely puts you in violation of this policy, correct?
That is correct, which also includes making up pictures, using pictures as a way to harass somebody, that, and even if it's a fake picture, but it has a person represented.
And also, I want to be clear that when students actually commit this infraction, the only control they have is actually putting the image out there. They cannot control the impact of that image. The impact of that image ultimately is what will trigger this particular infraction code, correct?
That is correct.
And potentially remove them from the opportunity to attend one of our schools, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we had that on the record because oftentimes it's, well, that wasn't my intent, or this was a joke. And at the end of the day, these tools are not a joke. And it only takes one bad decision or one bad joke for you not to be able to attend our schools anymore.
Correct. And a
Dr.
mistake.
Shanoff, can I just add that it's not sharing it electronically? It's also if you receive it from someone else and you show your friends on your phone. So say I get a bad image of someone and I share it with someone sitting next to me. That can also trigger this level 4. The only safe way if a student receives an inappropriate image to not get wound up into this is to share it with absolutely no one or to report it immediately to administration.
I was going to say, is there a safe harbor provision when an image is shared to somebody and then they go directly to administration? Because I want to make sure that students know that if they become in possession of one of these images or one of these deep fakes, if they come forward and they bring it to administration immediately, they don't need to necessarily have any concern about being caught up, but they have to do it right away, correct?
That is correct, and absolutely 100% correct. And we have had examples of students who have received AI generated pictures or texts that are harassing in nature, and they have reported it to school administration. So when they report it, they do qualify under safe harbor protection as long as they have not shared it or shown it to anybody else. But we have had multiple students do the right thing, and as soon as they receive it, they report it.
I also want to make sure that we clarify that if students believe that deleting images off of social media means that they're gone, they're not. So a lot of folks think that maybe Snapchat would be a place where things are safe because they ultimately disappear very quickly. Ultimately, they never disappear. Let's just be honest. And so there are all types of dummy accounts that are out there for which we have visibility into. So, which we thank folks for giving us that visibility. But if it does come to us, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because it's gone away, it never existed. It has existed, and we will address it as if it exists in perpetuity.
That's correct, and any of those level 4s are reported to law enforcement. And sometimes when we talk about harassment, just the fact that it's been transmitted electronically increases the level of consequence on the law enforcement side.
Have we seen an uptick in this since, AI has become so available to students? And
the short answer is yes. And so really that's why we are highlighting this, and also providing additional trainings that we do for the deans and the administrators. We're doing as much as we can to be proactive before the students come, because we want to make sure that they know that it's not only that it's wrong to do, but it violates the student code of conduct, and most of the time, if not every time, it's illegal, and there will be law enforcement consequences for those students.
I think I'd like if we could explore, I don't know, some kind of social media campaign maybe, or something for students, because I do feel like this is something they need to really be aware of, that there is big consequences to this. And even going back to the one with the drug distribution, making it clear to them that providing it for free to a friend could be considered drug distribution and have that higher impact on their consequences. So
yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I think it's a great suggestion. I actually think that this might be a great opportunity for schools to actually empower their student bodies and their student leaders locally. I think a lot of times it might have a greater impact when it comes from a familiar face, like a peer that they see as a campus leader, as opposed to seeing my face or Dr. Barrio's face. So I think that that's a great idea, and we can work with Dr. Evans to enlist the support of our high schools and our middle schools around this initiative. Thanks.
And related to that, in the meantime, we've been working with safety and security and with communications to create know the law posters that we share with communications, so we can add those specific violations to that, because the more we message it in different ways, the more hopefully the message will get across to students. Yep. The last slide. Oh, this slide just shows that we basically have removed, condensed everything to one one code for revisions. And what that means is that instead of having one explanation of the code of conduct and the consequences for secondary and one for elementary, we just have one, because based on the feedback, that would be simpler and easier to understand and easier to find. And we know what we observed is that language is close enough that we can do that and provide that information along with the matrix. So it reduces the number of pages on that section, but it also just makes it easier for parents and also for students and administrators to understand. And then this is the summary of the other changes that we have. So, and please note that some of these pages probably have changed, because when we did the revisions, it made the pages shorter or the code of conduct shorter. But the important thing is what's the substance there. So limited the time for a request for a hearing to 14 days from the pre-expulsion meeting. The reason we added that was because sometimes a year and a half after the original offense, we would get an expulsion hearing request, which really didn't make sense because the student's time was almost up at, wherever they were for their consequence. One thing that we added that you won't see reflected here that we shared with Mr. Boyd already based on recommendation was we added the requirement that parents must advise student services 5 days before the school board meeting if they intend to speak on students' discipline agenda item. That has not been something that has occurred often, but because it did occur one time this year, we wanted to make sure that that was clear for future reference.
And of course, if a decision was made for a student for their discipline within that 5 days, we could then make the decision to push that discipline back to the next school board meeting. We would not be using that as a way to penalize a parent in any way, shape, or form if they wanted to come in front of the board.
Can you help me understand how we're managing that and enforcing? I mean, theoretically, a parent can just come like they're citizens. So how are we enforcing that?
So I'll speak to it on the student services side, and then Ms. Korn can chime in on the. So on the student services side, we had this occur one time, and the parent mentioned the possibility of one time this year, speaking at a school board meeting about their child's expulsion hearing. So the reason that drew our attention, and we shared it with legal, was because the parent would be sharing what would otherwise be confidential information about their child, about an offense that they did, which could be egregious. And so we wanted to make sure that there was language in there that would prepare both the parents and the board to get that information presented, because the agenda item would be from a result of the potential discipline consequence for a level 4.
Placing that in the Code of Student Conduct would, and you're right, a parent can come and speak in public comment all they want, but if they wanted to speak on the agenda item and they did not provide us 5 days notice, my recommendation at, say, the meeting would be that agenda item is pulled until the next school board meeting so that there could be time to brief the school board and work with the family as well.
Okay.
Because technically, if they are coming to a school board meeting to speak, that is an appeal hearing. So we would need to have the time I would need to have the time to prepare you, and they would also need to have that time because it's approving a hearing order. So we would want to make sure that if they're going to speak within that 5 days, that there is the time if we need it.
Okay. I think obviously this is a good idea to implement to protect our students. However, I do potentially see some issues with that, especially if a parent isn't aware. I mean, not every parent's going to read Code of Conduct and they just come. So I wonder if meeting during our meeting or even in the comment section, there could be something that is added so that if a parent is not able to speak or we ask them not to speak about their child's issue, that they don't think that we're trying to suppress them. I know that you kind of go over the chair would go over the public comment. I don't want to call them rules, but suggestions that we have. So maybe this could be something added there too.
We can also add that to the court order that the hearing officer gives out to the family so that the family is aware in the correspondence afterwards, whether it's the court order or a separate notification, so that they have that information ahead of time.
Well, I was going to ask you to clarify that because you mentioned in my meeting that I had with you that during the expulsion process, you are adding this into your procedural, because it's only when this is for if they've gone through the expulsion process.
Correct. So to that point, what we're going to add is this verbiage in the document that they sign when they're told that their child is being put up for expulsion or for a placement at New Beginnings. So there's already options there that they can put on there in terms of if they want the expulsion hearing or if they want whatever type of procedural process. We're going to add this language so to make it clear that they that they would need to advise us 5 days prior to a board meeting if they want to speak to that agenda item. Okay. So and typically what happens is Mr. Vera or Dr. McMahon, when they go through that document, they actually read that portion to them so that it's clear what happens. And if it needs to be done in at least Spanish, we can we can translate it in Spanish, or if we need it in another language, we can translate it in any other language.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
The next one we have is there was a section that talked about a New Beginnings Code of Student Conduct, and we struck that just because we wanted to make it clear that the Code of Conduct, there's one Code of Conduct for every student, including at New Beginnings. And then from page 73 to 79, I explained that we created one discipline matrix for elementary and secondary rather than two separate. The only difference between the two was the complexity of the language, if you will, but really it wasn't that different for that would justify us having two different ones. So we just turned it into one. And then on page 79, we added clarity for consequences 21 to 26. Examples of those consequences, one of them that's probably the most used is placement at New Beginnings. But those are district decisions. And so we wanted to make sure we clarified that not only for school-based staff, but also for parents and students. And then page 88, we removed JUMP program information from the appendix because it's just that program's no longer available. And that was a decision of the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. And that leads us to any comments or questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the team for doing a great job through this process. This process went exactly how it's supposed to go with all of the input from the various stakeholder groups. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the student input as well. I think that there's so much, and we'll learn about this later on tonight. There's so much value added that comes from the student voice through all types of processes that exist. But I think when you start talking about the code of conduct, 99.9% of our students want to be on a safe campus where everything is calm and everybody is abiding by learning first, and so I'm grateful that especially with the team where they typically only see the cases where things haven't gone the way that they're supposed to go and people haven't followed the rules, that there's a clear respect and acknowledgement and empowerment to those that want the safe learning environment, that want a learning environment where everybody is accountable. So that's much appreciated. And lastly, I appreciate the respect by which you guys have all treated every parent and student that have come through here. for the hearing process, and even our hearing officer as well. You know, even though students make mistakes, they are still kids, and so there's an opportunity for them to turn a corner and learn from their mistakes. And that's what the discipline process is really about. It's about learning from your mistakes and getting better at just being yourself. And so I feel like you guys have done that very, very effectively this year, as have our school teams. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.